Okay, seventh period, I am over at the Board of Education office today, and so I want to give you your quick mini lesson that hopefully they'll be able to play for you. Otherwise, I'll also post it up on Schoology so you can take a look at it. I want to remind you about argumentative formats. Please tell me that you remember the three types of argumentative format that we've discussed so far this year. I'll give you a hint. The first one is classical. Do you remember the other two? Hopefully you're thinking Rogerian and Toulmin. So I'm going to talk about these for you so that you can get a quick reminder for how to write your argumentative essay and your synthesis essay if it happens to be an argumentative topic. So let's begin with classical argumentation. This is the one that I would prefer you use for timed writing. It is the best style to go ahead and have for your timed writing because you can get everything in that you need to get in and your point gets to be really clear. However, you can use the other two styles as well, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, as we know for classical argumentation, the first thing that you're writing is the introduction. And no, it's not a good idea to start your synthesis or your argumentative essay just straight off with a thesis statement unless you are running extremely short on time. So, introduction could include something like background information that you can use and you can find from either the documents in the synthesis section or that you can find from the prompt or from your own wonderful knowledge of AP US history. If there's something historical, you can bring in as being the background of whatever that topic is. You also want to make sure that you have a nice, clear thesis statement. In this case, you want that thesis statement to be a split thesis statement. Remember, it shows complexity to give your opponent's viewpoint first, although many people believe that. However, it is quite clear instead that blah, blah, blah. And so that you have that. This here should all be one paragraph of your timed write, not three paragraphs like it is when you're writing in, like a major paper format or something like that. Then you move into your confirmation paragraphs. And remember, for argumentative writing, confirmation paragraphs should have all the different evidence that you want. So it could be a current event evidence, a historical piece of evidence, could be something from your reading or your experience. But remember, try to get a variety of evidence that shows how well read you are or how much you know. Remember to review your Thompson Reader essays to kind of recall, oh yeah, the myth of progress. That one will work here as support. So that's confirmation paragraphs. And then you go into your refutation. What's important, and a lot of people left out on this last synthesis essay, was the rebuttal. So it's okay, you give your opponent's viewpoint, but then you have to go back and you have to make sure that it's clear what your own is. So you could say, for example, with the presidential political, like television, you could say, yes, television has helped to expose more people to politics and allow politicians to speak into the homes of all people across this country. However, it has also created a situation where image is more important than substance and has led us to maybe our current situation. Good? Speaking of our current situation, a conclusion in your essay. Now let me make it clear. If you don't have a conclusion, it doesn't hurt your score. Like if you're up to the point where you get to the conclusion and I'm thinking, oh, this is a 7 writing, I'm not going to downgrade it to a 6 just because you don't have a conclusion. However, if I'm reading your paper and I'm thinking, oh, this looks like it's going to be about a 7, and I get to the conclusion and it's an excellent big picture conclusion that shows either the implications or the result of whatever the topic is, or it brings it into today and explains why it's so important, this topic is so important today, that could take you from a 7 to an 8. So remembering the conclusion is a really good way to try to get yourself boosted up to those higher level scores. So, classical organization, 1 paragraph for this stuff, 2 to 3 paragraphs for confirmation, one paragraph for refutation and rebuttal or concession, and then one paragraph in your conclusion. Rogerian argumentation, remember this one? This is where you do have introduction and background, one paragraph, just like any other paper, but you don't include a thesis statement because the first thing you do is you provide scenarios where the opposing argument might be true. This might be a good argumentation style for you if you decide for the argumentative exam that you are going to qualify. You see some situations where one side holds true and some situations where the other side holds true. You just have to save your strongest arguments for last. So if you're like, I can see both ways, but one side is a little bit stronger, then do the both ways thing, but end with the side that you think is a little bit stronger, and then provide a compromise or explain how the first side could benefit from the second side. And then finally, write your conclusions, still big picture, still make it relevant to today, things like that. This one is the argumentation style I use all the time in my personal life. Whenever I'm arguing anything, I'm usually focused on Rogerian argumentation because I know the best way to win people to my side is to let them know that I understand their side. And that's what I use in my personal life. This is a little tricky on the AP exam because you might run out of time and the person reading your paper at the end might be confused about what side you're actually arguing. So be careful with this one, but you could still use it if you enjoyed using it before in class. Last one is Toulmin. This one is an introduction, and remember, this includes that thing we talked about, the warrant. The one principle that most people can agree upon with this topic. So for example, with the presidential, the use of television in presidential campaigns, I think most people would agree that we want the best person in the job of president. So if you had in your introduction, you talked about like democracy and how important it is, and then you ended your introduction with, isn't it fair to say that we want the best person involved in the role of president in our country? And then you move into the background, which builds up a logical argument for our warrant. So that's where you would say, like, the best person for this country includes someone who, whichever way you decide to go with that question, either can put on a good image and a good face for other countries, so we appear strong even when we're weak, and that way would be on the positive side of the television image over policy. Or you could say, isn't it true that the best person for this side is someone who knows the policy and is smart enough to be able to set an agenda for the future, but may not necessarily be able to look the best on television? Then you move into your confirmation, and the difference between Toulmin and classical organization is that the confirmation paragraphs include a refutation, a rebuttal, and a concession for each main idea. So here's main idea number one, here's what the opposing side would say, but here's why they're wrong. Here's main idea two, here's what the opposing side would say, and this is why they might be right about that. Here's main idea three, this is what the opposing side would say, and here's where they're wrong. So that's kind of the idea behind it. The good thing about that is if you choose to do Toulmin argumentation, you'll get to the opposing side for sure because you're only 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs into your paper by the time you're already talking about the opposing side. And remember, that's a bonus for the AP readers. And then last, your conclusion. Again, big picture conclusion, one that brings the topic to the present day or explains why it's so important. But in the conclusion for Toulmin, you almost always go back to referencing the warrant, like why we want the best person for the job to be president. Okay, I am going to put this up on YouTube and then also put it onto Schoology. So hopefully you'll be able to watch it in class. If not, you'll be able to access it in Schoology and listen to it with your headphones. And then we'll talk about any questions you have about this in class tomorrow. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, 7th period.